Sounds good.
Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. We are here in the garage with my two Harley Davidson motorcycles, my 2022 Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob, and my 2019 Harley Davidson Iron 1200. And so one of the biggest questions that I have ever gotten and most frequently get ever since I've had two bikes, I've had two bikes for about a year now, the biggest question that I always get from people is, how do I pick which one I want to ride that day? And that's actually a pretty good question. It's a pretty good problem to have. I love the fact that I've got two different options here, the Street Bob and the Sportster. So it is a pretty good question, and I do have two different kind of answers to that, two different reasons for that. I also get the question of which one do I like better, which one do I like riding more. To that one, I don't really have a good answer. I love both of these things. I don't really prefer one or the other, but I do have scenarios and situations in which I choose one over the other. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to take both these bikes out for a ride in those scenarios that I choose to take the Street Bob and choose to take the Iron 1200. So if you guys out there are in the same situation as me, if you have multiple bikes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many bikes you might have, let me know what your guys' deciding factors are on taking that specific bike out that day for one reason or the other. Obviously, every bike kind of has its own intended purpose, its own style, its own reason, for whatever it might be, whether it's touring around town, weekend cruising, adventure riding, sport bike riding, whatever it might be. If you have multiple bikes out there, make sure you go ahead and drop it down in the comments what different reasons or places you take your bikes out if you have multiple. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna go hop out on the Street Bob right now, show you guys where I prefer to ride this bike. Then we'll get out on the Sportster. We'll show you where I started most frequently riding this bike.
Alrighty guys, so we are out here in Sellersville, Pennsylvania at Freedom Valley Harley Davidson. Got a nice new CVO sitting up over there. I was taking a look at that thing. It's pretty nice. But anyways, we're out in Sellersville, Pennsylvania. This probably starts to give you a little bit of an idea of how and when and what reasons or what types of rides I use the Street Bob for, since we are a little ways outside of the city on a little bit of a longer day trip here. So that kind of gives you some insight probably preemptively on how and why I choose to ride the Street Bob. So let's hop on it and talk about it. Alrighty guys, so like I said, probably no secret, probably somewhat obvious as to why and when I choose to ride the Street Bob, but as you probably guessed it, anytime I'm getting out of the city, of course you guys know I live in Philly, in the city, you know, big city, urban area, all that stuff. Anytime I'm getting outside of the city, I'm typically choosing to take the Street Bob. Anytime I'm getting out, longer rides, day trips, weekend trips, anything that is getting outside, you know, hitting a lot of highway miles at one time. So if we think about like where I'm at today, we're going out even a little bit farther. We're in Sellersville currently. That's about 30 miles outside the city. We're gonna hit another 20-25 over to Lake Nockamixon. I'm gonna show you guys that in a minute. That's gonna be some nice views and stuff once we get over there. But then I'm gonna head over to New Hope. So probably like over 100 miles round trip today. Anything like that, I'm typically choosing to take the Street Bob. So we did have quite a bit of highway on the way to get out here. You take 309, a lot of highway, you're riding 70, 75, 80 miles an hour. And just because of that type of riding, I'm choosing to take the Street Bob on stuff like that. For plain and simple reasons of the fact that I just like the way this handles on the highway better. You've got more power, you've got more comfort, I've got more space, it's more planted. For all of those reasons, anytime I'm getting out there traveling a little bit longer distance, day trips, weekends, highway, all that type of thing, I'm typically going to opt for the Street Bob. Not to say the Sportster can't do it, because obviously if you guys tuned in, I just had the Sportster out on like a 250-mile round trip camping trip. Handled perfectly, did it just fine, but it wasn't necessarily my preference. But also on the other side of that, that's not to say I won't take the Street Bob around town or just do some short distance on this, because of course you could just do that as well. But typically that's not what I'm going to use the Street Bob for. And that's what I decided I wanted to do today. Like I said, we're heading out towards Lake Nockamixon. We're going to get you some good views there, but I wanted to also stop at that Harley dealer there, Freedom Valley Harley Davidson in Sellersville. I'd actually never been there before. I think it's part of the Hannums family. You guys see me out at Brandywine Harley Davidson every now and then Hannums in Media, PA as well. I'm pretty sure they're part of that family. They got about like 5 or 6 different ones in the area. Pretty nice showroom in there. It was like super nice and clean, a lot of good inventory. Some of their prices on bikes too looked pretty decent. It looks like prices are starting to level out from what they were a little while back when prices were just skyrocketing all over the place. They had some decently priced Street Bobs and lowrider S's. I would recommend taking a look at those guys out there if you're in the market for a bike. But anyways, back to taking the Street Bob out on some of these longer rides outside the city. Some of the stuff that I have chosen to do with it this year, I have ridden it across the state of PA, from Philly up to the northwest corner of PA by Erie, Pennsylvania, if anybody's familiar with that. That was about, well, actually did a lot of riding there too when I was there. That was about an 800-mile trip when I did that. That was actually the first longer trip that I had taken on the Street Bob so far. Other ones were a recent camping trip up to the Poconos. And like I said, it's just longer, it's more highway, you know, you get more range out of the tank, you get more power on the highway. It's just a more comfortable riding position for me. I've got more space in my hips and my legs and my arms, it's more planted. For all of those types of reasons, that's why I just prefer to take this anytime I'm going out on some of those longer trips. The range with the tank is a big one too. Even though this is a 3.5 gallon tank, the Sportster's 3.3. This is just so much more fuel efficient. I can push this well over 100 miles, like 130, 140, 150, depending on the type of ride we're doing. Sportster, every time I hit 70 to like 80 miles on the tank, that thing, I'm looking for gas ASAP because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to push it. Man, anyways, this is so nice out here. I think this is, what is this, Bucks County near Quakertown, I think? I don't remember what county it is, but it's near Quakertown, PA. Anyways, we're getting closer and closer to Lake Knockemixon. We're going to ride right out onto this fishing pier, give you guys a good look at the lake. I'm going to check that out in just a second. Stay tuned. Alrighty, here we go. Look at this. This is beautiful. Fishing pier goes right out into the water here. Look at that. This lake is actually pretty big too. Awesome day for it to get out here. Perfect temperatures, minimal clouds, no humidity, stuff like that. This is awesome. So there you go. A little windy out today. Man, you can see that water really moving. But yeah, so this is Lake Knockemixon State Park. Pretty big. Goes all the way from over there all the way down that way. This fishing pier, obviously, as you can see, comes out into the water. So really nice. There's camping and trails and stuff all around that you can see in the woods there. So again, this is probably 45-50 miles north of Philly or so, near Quakertown, PA. Pretty cool destination spot to ride to and get out of the city a little bit, get some good views, some good scenery, some nature. Get a good look at the beautiful Redline Red Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob here. Man, love this thing. So anyway, yeah, this is going to wrap up the portion for the Street Bob. Like I said, I'm taking this thing out, choosing this mostly for some of those longer rides, highway rides, longer day trips, weekend trips, stuff like that. So next up, you know what's coming up next. Let's go ahead and hop on the Sportster. Alright everybody, so as you can see, obviously we are on the Sportster now, and you probably guessed it, we are right down in the heart, in the center of Philadelphia. And you guys probably already have a feeling of what I'm going to say. You guessed it, I have been mostly using the Sportster lately for this type of like city riding, urban riding, the around town type of stuff, the bar hopping, the short rides, the errands around town and everything. And I do actually kind of hate to say that, because if you guys have been tuning in for a while, you know that I have been one of the biggest proponents and advocates for the Sportster. I love this bike. You guys know that I've done kind of everything with this thing, taken it everywhere as my daily rider for about 3.5 years until I got the Street Bob. And so this kind of main type of riding here in the city like this really only started to take place when I got the Street Bob and started to use that for some of the longer distance stuff. And now before I start to take some heat for that, let me explain. Yes, I still do believe that you can do all that stuff with the Sportster. I still do a bunch of that stuff with my Sportster, maybe just not to the capacity that I did before, but I still get this thing out on some long trips, and I'll explain on that in just a minute. But to answer that question of how do I choose between the two, lately this has been kind of how I choose when I'm, you know, going around town, running errands, bar hopping, cafe hopping, all that stuff. You're in these tight little quarters and spaces of the city. The Sportster just tends to be my choice for that for a couple reasons. Mostly just because it's a tad lighter and it's just less power, obviously, than the Street Bob. So that just makes it a little bit easier to maneuver around the city with like this, all these stops and starts and everything. You get some of that power and momentum of the bigger, faster, heavier Street Bob going. You know, you got to work a little bit harder to stop and start it and stuff like that. So sometimes when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm like, I just want to run around town on the Sportster, you know? Also, too, it just gives off that awesome vibe, in my opinion, in the city. You know, it's loud, it's clunky, it's a little bit old school. It's going to demand a little bit of attention, you know, from the people out there. You're going to be seen a little bit more. A couple other simple, basic reasons for that, too, is because my Sportster, it's about 4 years old now. You know, it's been through its paces. I've got 18,000 miles, over 18,000 miles on this thing, and city riding is obviously a lot more, I would say, like, rough on the bike. The starting, the stopping, the traffic, the potholes, all this stuff is just very taxing on the bike, in my opinion. And so some of that kind of comes too from, you know, maybe let's just try to preserve the Street Bob a little bit. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but, you know, save it from the potholes, save it from all this just, you know, chaos that goes down here, all this disastrous construction, the traffic, the stopping, the starting. Hopefully, in my mind, maybe that's like helping preserve it a little bit. You know, the Sportster, it's older, it's a little bit beat up. It's, you know, I mean, if something goes wrong, then, you know, hey, it's the Sportster. We'll get it fixed up eventually. But some of that mindset, like I said, is just kind of maybe hopefully to preserve the Street Bob from the dangers and the rigors and just the abuse that these city streets can put on your motorcycle. So that's kind of another factor that goes into my mind there. And so while we're out on the Sportster today, as you can see, we've been coming down Spring Garden through the city here. We're actually going to meet up with a few buddies down at the gas station here, and then we'll kind of continue this conversation. One of them should be on a pretty sweet lowrider S. I'm going to gas up and we'll be right back. So yeah, basically, like I was saying, this is the type of stuff that I've been using the Sportster for now, meeting up with some homies around town. We're gonna go through a quick little ride through Philly and all that fun type of stuff. But the piece that I wanted to say and make it be known is that, like I said, I've got 18,000 miles, over 18,000 miles on that Sportster in about 4-ish years, I think. So, I mean, that lets you know that I ride the thing, absolutely. You know, it's not like a bike that I'm just strictly using for around town and all that type of thing. And a good amount of those miles did come this year on some longer trips. There were several days that I just kind of woke up. I was going to meet up with some of the friends here. We're like, we're going out for a ride. It's going to be like 100 miles, 150 plus round trip. I'm like, you know what? I just kind of feel like hopping on the Sportster today. And, you know, with the luxury of having two bikes, you know, that's what I was able to do. Hop on the Sportster one day, hop on the Street Bob the other day. And really the longest trip of that was, I made a full video on this. We did about over, like, I think it was 250, 300 miles up to Dingman's Ferry to go camping on this thing. And it held up like an absolute champ. Like, I mean, as I completely expected it would. So the only reason, like I said, that I really think this is more so like my city, urban, like around town bike is because I have the Street Bob. If I did not have that bike, then, yeah, obviously I'd still be doing everything on this bike as normal. And that really is the beauty and the luxury of having two bikes. You can kind of use them for different specific things, but like I said, it's not to say one or the other can or can't do any of those things. Like, I still take the Street Bob around town sometimes, like if I need to for any reason, but it just tends to be my preference that around town I'm probably going to end up taking the Sportster. When I'm getting out traveling nice and long, all that fun stuff, probably going to be the Street Bob. And so like I said at the beginning, if you guys are rocking 2, multiple bikes, 3, 4, 5, who knows how many, let me know like what the different scenarios are, the different reasonings of why you ride them. Maybe you wake up one day, you just feel like riding this specific one. Maybe a certain scenario that you're in makes you want to ride a different one. I'm assuming most times, you know, if you got like a bagger, you're typically using that for your traveling, your touring, all that type of thing. And you know, you got an adventure bike, that's going to be pretty specific to some off-road. Sportster, maybe you're like me, riding it around town, anything like that. Sport bike, if you want to go fast and fly around on the highway or the track. So many different opportunities and possibilities with all different styles of bikes out there. Use them for their intended purpose, or honestly, like I said, sometimes it's just a feel thing, you know. I wake up, feel like riding this one, feel like riding that one, feel like go test ride a different one. That's the beauty of all the different styles out there. But we got them all parked up here. We're going to continue a nice little day of riding again on the Sportster. Going to be through town and some short little quick stuff, obviously, but that's going to wrap it up for now. As always, if you like anything we got going on here, make sure you go ahead and like this video, drop a comment down there, and subscribe to the channel. As always, make sure you guys ride safe out there. Make it a good one, guys. It's the Moto John. We'll see you all on down the road. Peace.